The fluorescent lights of Target felt different that Tuesday afternoon. 3 hours earlier, I'd signed papers that made me a billionaire. My tech startup, CodeStream, had just been acquired by Microsoft for $2.3 billion. At 28 years old, Gilbert Sullivan, the kid from Southside Chicago who wore the same 3 shirts to high school, was now worth more than he could spend in 10 lifetimes. But I wasn't celebrating in some penthouse. I was in Target, buying paper towels like a normal person, trying to process everything. My phone kept buzzing with congratulatory texts, but I'd turned it face down in my cart. I needed this moment of ordinary to ground me before my life changed forever. That's when I heard the voice. 15 years. 15 years since he walked out on Mom and Me, and I'd recognized that gravelly baritone anywhere. My father, Leroy Sullivan, stood 3 aisles over in the home goods section, talking loudly to someone I couldn't see. Man, I'm telling you, some kids just don't appreciate what their parents sacrifice, he said, his voice dripping with false righteousness. I got this son. Well, had a son. Ungrateful little punk probably amounting to nothing right now. My chest tightened. The paper towels in my hand suddenly weighed 1,000 pounds. He was talking about me. To a stranger. In Target. I should have walked away. Driven to my lawyer's office, popped champagne, called my mom. Instead, I felt my feet moving toward his voice, drawn like a moth to a flame that had burned me too many times before. I rounded the corner slowly, my heart hammering against my ribs. Leroy stood next to the picture frames, gesturing animatedly to another black man about his age, mid-50s, wearing a Target employee vest. The name tag read Byron. The boy had every opportunity, Leroy continued, picking up a cheap wooden frame and examining it like he gave a damn about home decor. I worked 2 jobs to keep food on that table, and what does he do? Drops out of contact, won't return my calls. Probably living in some basement apartment, playing video games. I almost laughed. The irony was too thick. This man, who disappeared when I was 13, leaving Mom to work 3 jobs while battling lupus, was rewriting history in aisle 7. Byron nodded politely, clearly uncomfortable but trapped by customer service obligations. That's tough, man. Kids these days, you know. Exactly. Leroy slapped the shelf. I tried to teach him about hard work, discipline. But no, he was too soft. Too much like his mama. The mention of my mother sent white-hot rage through my veins. Mom, who died 4 years ago from complications with her lupus, complications that might have been manageable if she hadn't been working herself to death because he abandoned us. I stepped closer, my sneakers squeaking on the polished floor. Leroy's back was still to me, but Byron's eyes flicked in my direction. I caught his gaze and put a finger to my lips. Byron's eyes widened slightly, understanding passing between us. He gave an almost imperceptible nod. So what does your son do now? Byron asked, buying me time. Leroy scoffed, setting down the frame with more force than necessary. Who knows? Last I heard from my sister, because he won't talk to me directly, he was messing around with computers. Probably fixing laptops at some Best Buy, making $12 an hour. The specificity of his disdain was almost impressive. I'd built a company that revolutionized cloud computing infrastructure, employed over 300 people, and in 3 hours had become wealthier than he could conceptualize. But in his mind, I was still the 13-year-old he deemed not worth sticking around for. I cleared my throat. Excuse me. Leroy turned, his face showing mild irritation at being interrupted. He looked right at me, right through me, with zero recognition. I'd changed, sure. 15 years, a beard, contact lenses instead of glasses, a gym membership that actually got used. But I was still his son. His only son. Can I help you? Leroy asked, annoyance creeping into his tone. I couldn't help but overhear, I said, keeping my voice steady despite the earthquake happening in my chest. You were talking about your son. Yeah, what about it? He crossed his arms defensively. Byron stood frozen, watching this unfold with the intensity of someone witnessing a car crash in slow motion. I'm curious, I continued, stepping closer. When's the last time you actually spoke to him? Your son. Leroy's jaw tightened. That's personal, man. Why you all in my business? Humor me, I pressed. I'm interested in deadbeat parent psychology. The word deadbeat landed like a slap. Leroy's face flushed, his hands balling into fists. Deadbeat? You don't know nothing about me, young man. I provided for that boy. For 13 years, I interrupted, my voice cold and precise. Then you walked out the day before his 8th grade graduation because his mother asked you to contribute more than beer money to the household. The color drained from Leroy's face. Byron took a subtle step back, giving us space while staying close enough to intervene if needed. How do you, Leroy started, his eyes finally looking at me like I was a person and not an inconvenient obstacle. Wait. Gilbert. There it is, I said, spreading my arms wide. Took you long enough, Leroy. He hated when I called him by his first name. Always had. Dad was a title you earned, I decided years ago, and he'd failed that test spectacularly. Oh my God, son. His face transformed into something resembling joy, reaching out as if to embrace me. I didn't recognize you. You look so different, so grown. I stepped back, holding up a hand. Don't. Gilbert, I was just talking, you know how it is, shooting the breeze. You were lying, I corrected. To a complete stranger. About me. Calling me a failure while standing in Target buying a $7 picture frame you probably can't afford. Leroy's expression hardened, the mask slipping. Boy, you better watch your tone. Or what? I laughed, hollow and sharp. You'll disappear for another 15 years. Byron coughed awkwardly. I should probably get back to work. Stay, I said, not breaking eye contact with Leroy. Please. I'd like a witness for this. Leroy glanced between us, confusion mixing with growing anger. A witness? Gilbert, what are you talking about? I'm your father. We're family. We share DNA, I corrected. That's where the connection ends. He tried a different approach, his voice softening into something approximating fatherly concern. Son, I know I wasn't perfect, but I've thought about you every day. I wanted to reach out so many times, but I didn't know if you'd want to hear from me. You have my number, I cut him off. Had it for years. Aunt Bridget gave it to you 4 years ago when Mom died. You didn't come to the funeral. That stopped him cold. Byron inhaled sharply. I was going through some things, Leroy mumbled, unable to meet my eyes. I heard about Candace, and I wanted to be there, but... You were in Atlantic City, I said flatly. Aunt Bridget told me. You were on a gambling trip with your buddies while your ex-wife, the woman who raised your son alone, was being lowered into the ground. Leroy's mouth opened and closed like a fish. No defense came out. You want to know what's really funny? I continued, feeling a dangerous calm settle over me. You called me a failure. Said I was probably making $12 an hour fixing computers. I didn't mean. 3 hours ago, I said slowly, savoring each word, I sold my company for $2.3 billion. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the background noise of Target seemed to fade. No cartwheels squeaking, no price checks on aisle 4, no kids begging for toys. Just Leroy's face, cycling through disbelief, shock, and then something ugly, calculation. Byron's eyes went wide. Billion? With a B. With a B, I confirmed, pulling out my phone. I opened my banking app, showing the preliminary deposit, just $50 million as a down payment before the full acquisition processed. The numbers glowed on the screen, $50 million. Leroy grabbed for the phone, but I pulled it back. Don't touch. Gilbert, son, that's incredible. His entire demeanor shifted like a switch had flipped. The hard edge vanished, replaced by an oleaginous smile that made my skin crawl. See, I always knew you had it in you. You got that Sullivan ambition, that drive. From Mom, I interrupted. I got that from Mom. From watching her work night shifts at the hospital, then come home and help me with homework. From seeing her choose between buying me new shoes or paying the electric bill. From learning that real love means sacrifice, not just disappearing when things get hard. Leroy's smile flickered but didn't fade. He was already rewriting the narrative in his head. I could see it happening in real time. Your mother and I, we had our differences, but we both wanted the best for you. Stop. My voice came out harder than I'd intended. Stop rewriting history. You wanted nothing to do with me. Leroy glanced around nervously, aware that other shoppers were starting to notice the confrontation. A woman with a toddler in her cart had stopped 2 aisles over, pretending to examine throw pillows while clearly listening. Gilbert, can we talk about this somewhere private? Leroy asked, lowering his voice. This isn't the place. No, I said firmly. You started this conversation publicly, talking about me to a stranger. We'll finish it the same way. Byron shifted uncomfortably but didn't leave. Good. I meant what I said about wanting a witness. Leroy tried yet another angle, this time going for sympathy. Look, I know I made mistakes. I was young, scared, didn't know how to be a father. But I've changed, Gilbert. I've grown. And now that you're successful, maybe we could start fresh? Build something together. There it was. The real reason for his sudden warmth. Not remorse, not love, not even curiosity about who I'd become. Just the smell of money. Build something together. I repeated slowly. Like what, exactly? His eyes lit up, mistaking my question for interest. Well, you're a businessman now. You understand investments, opportunities. I've got some ideas, some projects that just need a little capital to get off the ground. I actually laughed, the sound echoing off the shelves filled with scented candles and decorative baskets. You want money. I'm talking about investment opportunities. You want money, I repeated. That's why you're suddenly interested in reconnecting. Not because you're sorry. Not because you want to know me. Because you think I'm a bank. Leroy's face flushed red. That's not fair, Gilbert. I'm your father. Family helps family. Family. The word tasted bitter. You want to talk about family? Let me tell you about family, Leroy. Family is Mom working doubles at Northwestern Memorial while her lupus was flaring up because she couldn't afford to miss a shift. Family is my neighbor, Mrs. Brooklyn, letting me stay at her place after school because Mom couldn't be home until 9 p.m. Family is my 11th grade teacher, Mr. Washington, who bought me a suit for college interviews because I didn't have one. Each example hit him like a physical blow, his posture shrinking slightly with every word. Family, I continued, voice rising, is the people who chose to show up. Every single day. Not the man who bounced and then had the audacity to call his kid a failure in a Target. I never called you a failure to your face. That makes it better. I stepped closer, forcing him to look at me. You talking trash about me behind my back is somehow more acceptable. Byron interjected quietly, maybe I should get my manager. No need, I said, not breaking eye contact with Leroy. I'm almost done. Leroy seemed to realize his money-making fantasy was crumbling. Desperation crept into his voice. Gilbert, please. I'm struggling here. I'm about to lose my apartment. I'm behind on child support for... He stopped abruptly. My blood went cold. For what? Who? Leroy's face went pale as he realized his mistake. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Who, Leroy? I demanded. He mumbled something incomprehensible. Speak up. I have 2 daughters, he finally said, the words barely audible. From my marriage after your mother. They're 12 and 10. The world tilted. I had sisters. Half-sisters I'd never known about. Leroy had moved on, started a new family, and apparently failed them just as spectacularly as he'd failed me. You have other kids, I said slowly, processing this information, and you're behind on child support for them too. Did you abandon them the same way you abandoned me? Their mother kicked me out. I wonder why, I said sarcastically. Let me guess. You couldn't hold down a job? Started gambling again? Cheated? His silence was confirmation enough. Byron whispered, Jesus. Those girls, I said, my mind racing. What are their names? Leroy hesitated. Why do you want to know? Because unlike you, I actually care about the consequences of bringing children into this world. Names, Leroy. Rosa and Alma, he mumbled. But what does it matter to you? What does it matter? He really didn't get it. He couldn't comprehend that I might care about two girls growing up with the same absent father I'd had, struggling the same way Mom and I had struggled. An idea formed in my mind. Cold. Calculated. Petty, maybe, but satisfying. Here's what's going to happen, I said. Leroy's eyes lit up with hope, probably imagining a check with lots of zeros. Yes, son, whatever you think is best. I'm going to find Rosa and Alma's mother, I interrupted. I'm going to make sure your daughters have everything they need. College funds, healthcare, a stable home. Everything you should have provided but didn't. His face fell. That's great, Gilbert, really generous, but what about you? I smiled, but it wasn't kind. You get nothing. What? But I'm your father. You can't just. Watch me. I pulled out my phone again, this time opening my notes app. I'm going to hire a private investigator to find your ex-wife. I'm going to set up a trust fund for your daughters that you can't touch. And I'm going to make sure they know they have a big brother who actually gives a damn about their future. Leroy grabbed my arm. Gilbert, please, I'm begging you. I need help. I'm your father. I looked at his hand on my arm, then back at his face. Take your hand off me. He didn't let go. Just a little something to get me back on my feet. Leroy. My voice dropped to something dangerous. Let go. Byron stepped forward. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to release him. Other shoppers had definitely noticed now. A store manager was walking toward us, accompanied by a security guard. The woman with the toddler had her phone out, recording. Leroy finally released my arm, desperation and anger warring on his face. The store manager arrived, a middle-aged black woman whose name tag identified her as Michelle. Is everything all right here? Fine, Leroy said quickly. Just a family discussion. It's not fine, I interrupted, looking at Michelle. This man grabbed me without permission. I'd like it documented. Leroy's eyes widened. Gilbert, come on, don't do this. Why not? I asked. You've spent 15 years doing whatever you wanted without consequences. Maybe it's time that changed. Michelle looked between us, professional concern on her face. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave the store. I'm leaving, Leroy said, backing up with his hands raised. But he looked at me with pure venom. You're really going to do this? Turn your back on your own father when he needs help? I learned from the best, I replied. He pointed at me, his finger shaking. You'll regret this. You think you're better than me because you got lucky with some computer thing? You're just as cold and heartless as I always said. And there it is, I said calmly. The real Leroy. Not the sorry father. Not the changed man. Just the bitter narcissist who can't accept responsibility for anything. You want to know the truth? Leroy snarled, his composure completely shattered now. I left because you were a weak little kid who cried all the time. Your mother coddled you, made you soft. I couldn't stand watching it. The admission hung in the air like poison. Byron inhaled sharply. Michelle looked horrified. The woman recording everything gasped audibly. But I felt nothing. No pain, no shock. Just a cold, crystalline clarity. Thank you, I said quietly. Leroy blinked, confused. What? Thank you for finally being honest. for dropping the act. I looked at Michelle. Did you get that on your security cameras? She nodded, understanding immediately. We did. Good. I turned back to Leroy. You just made this very easy for me. When I find Rosa and Alma's mother, I'm going to make sure she has a recording of you admitting you abandoned your child because he cried too much. That should help with any custody arrangements. The blood drained from Leroy's face as he realized what he'd done. No, wait, I didn't mean, I was angry, I wasn't thinking. Consequences, I said simply. Meet them. Security escorted Leroy out, his protests echoing through the store. I watched him go, feeling something shift inside me. Not satisfaction. Exactly. More like closure. The ghost I'd been carrying around for 15 years suddenly felt lighter, more manageable. Michelle touched my shoulder gently. Are you okay? I think I finally am, I said, surprised to find it was true. Byron was still standing there, looking stunned. Man, that was... I don't even know what to say. You don't have to say anything. Thanks for being here. For what it's worth, he said quietly, you handled that better than I would have. I left Target that day without the paper towels I'd come for, but with something more valuable, freedom. The weight I'd carried since I was 13, the question of whether I was enough, whether I'd somehow caused my father to leave, lifted completely. 2 weeks later, I found Leroy's ex-wife, Carmen, through my lawyer. She was working as a nurse in Gary, Indiana, raising Rosa and Alma alone while Leroy dodged child support. When I explained who I was and what I wanted to do, she cried. Your father told them you were dead, she said through tears. He said his first family was gone. I set up college funds for both girls, paid off Carmen's mortgage, made sure they'd never struggle the way Mom and I had. And when I finally met Rosa and Alma, seeing my own eyes looking back at me from their faces, I understood what family actually meant. It wasn't blood. It was choice. 3 months after that Target confrontation, I got a message from Leroy. Just 2 words, help me. I blocked the number. People ask me sometimes if I regret how I handled things. If I wish I'd given him another chance, been the bigger person, forgiven him for my own peace of mind. My answer is always the same, I am at peace. And I didn't need to set myself on fire to forgive someone who never asked for forgiveness, only for money. Rosa calls me every Sunday now. Alma sends me drawings. Carmen texts me pictures of report cards and soccer games. That's family. That's what Leroy will never understand. And you know what? I'm completely okay with that.